Hi everybody, Jonathan here with another Twinmotion and Vectorworks tutorial today. We're going to be looking at creating some exceptional exteriors within only 15 minutes. Now if you've seen my incredible interiors in 15 minutes video, then you'll know that you've got a lot to look forward to. So if you're new around here, please do subscribe to the channel. It's really great to see lots of new users coming on board, and it really helps the channel grow and helps me motivate to actually do more videos for you. Anyway, let's get going and I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye. Okay, so we're going to start off taking a little look at the Vectorworks model. This is for a couple of new houses you can see for a small development. And I'm just showing you that I'm exporting the model in Cinema 4D file. And what I tend to do is just do one layer at a time. So I quite like to break up the export into various layers. And the reason I do this is because then if only one element of the project changes, for example, the buildings, it means that you don't need to update the site. So it's a really good idea. I'm just breaking this up into the ground floor and the roof layer and then the site layer. So very simple really in terms of exporting. And for the extra few seconds it takes to actually export the model in 3 chunks, I find that if I do need to do a lot of updating later, then this really benefits me, because I can, as I say, just simply update the bits of the model that changes. Now you can see I'm exporting these layers one at a time. There is also with Vectorworks the new Direct Datasmith link, and this is actually really good if you're kind of in the middle of what I call design flow with lots of changes occurring and you're not quite ready to maybe set up the final materials for Twinmotion yet, but you'd still like to visualize it. And the good thing with that technique is you only have to change the model and click the update button and it will appear in Twinmotion. Anyway, you can see only took a few minutes to export that layer in multiple layers, and now the great thing is I've only got to change that one particular layer at a time. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into Twinmotion. So we're just going to go ahead and import into Twinmotion those layers each time using the keep hierarchy setting. And the good thing about the keep hierarchy, as we've discussed before, is that basically you can delete items or modify individual items if needed. Whereas if you do collapse by material, it does mean that all items of the same material will get collapsed into one giant big object as well. Okay, so you can see we've just imported our very first object, and the very first thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and change that background, and I can't resist just kind of doing a tiny bit of work on the site before we import the rest. So I normally start with the site and do things like replace the grass with better grass in Twinmotion, and if you get the background grass matching the foreground grass, you can see you get quite a nice seamless environment there. So that's looking good, just got the site in so far. Let's just drag some nicer asphalt onto the road, and we'll do a bit more work on the kind of materials before we kind of bring the rest in. Now I do often find that I want to use the colour picker to darken those materials down, and the grunge slider is really nice and it kind of makes everything look a bit more realistic and a bit more weathered. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just import those other bits of our Vectorworks model. So you can see I'm importing the ground floor and just going to use the material that's already in the scene. Okay, so what that means is if you've modified the material in the scene, it will use that modified material. At the moment, none of these materials have been modified, so it's okay. So it just takes a few seconds to sequentially bring in the main bits of the model, and we've rebuilt our Vectorworks model using that layer structure. And as you can see in the scene graph, it does make it quite easy to manage the individual elements of your model if you wanted to turn those on and off, for example. Okay, good. So here we go. We've got our model looking good already. What I'm going to do to begin with is basically just tweak some of the textures and actually darken them down a bit, as I've said. I always find they come in a bit light from either SketchUp or Vectorworks. You can see the quality of the texture looks good. It just comes in a bit too light. So if we just use that colour picker to darken it down, just bring a bit more tone and sort of depth into the texture, as it were. So it's already looking miles better, I think. So it's definitely a really important tip. Do the same on this timber cladding. We'll click OK. Yep, those are the kind of tones I was hoping for. Look really good. So I tend to do that before I start maybe replacing materials. And as ever, just save your project once you've done a little bit of work. So what we're going to do now is just jump back into Vectorworks and make a few tweaks to the Vectorworks model, which I've already done. I'm just going to re-export because I want to show you this process of doing the updating. Basically, I'll just click and overwrite the site and click Save and Replace. Then when I go back to Twinmotion, I can literally go back to the import doc and just click the refresh button, and there it comes in with the new data. You can see that it's actually retained any overwritten materials that I've kind of used. So that's really, really nice. And now I've got that nice kind of bricks around on the site there. So this sort of workflow, even though it's not quite using the direct datasmith link, I think still really, really quite seamless. And I don't mind. I'm quite happy to hop back into Vectorworks, do a bit more modelling, and then just re-export and do that updating. So either work extremely well, and yeah, give this method a try if you haven't done this one before. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and work on these materials. Once again, you can see I'm going to use that grunge slider to get a bit more kind of texture and body into the image there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead now and change the weather. You know, we never have these perfect blue skies in the UK very often, so a little bit of cloud in that sky would just add a bit more kind of realism. And to be fair, it actually does tweak the nature of the lighting a little bit just to make it look a bit more realistic as well. So let's darken up the grey around those windows. These are a much darker grey, you can see, and that gives a nice bit of contrast as it comes through. So let's have a look. Let's just work on the roof tiles there. So I decided to swap from slate to a kind of more ready tile just to get a bit of nicer sort of contrast in colours on this particular project. Okay, so let's just adjust the sort of darkness of that timber cladding a little bit there. So it's looking pretty good. This is really the first few moves that I always make. As I say, import the model nicely in stages, do a bit of work on the materials in the project just before you get started on what I call the propping out stage, which is what we're going to look at shortly. So we're just going to finish off these materials, but I hope you'll agree it's very, very rapid to do. And now that Twinmotion has such a good library of materials built in, it makes it very, very rapid. You know, look, Unreal Engine I've been looking at a lot recently and doing sort of quite a bit of testing and learning, and it looks amazing. But the speed of Twinmotion is what it's all about. It's just so fluid and so quick and so easy to grab what you need. You know, the material editor in Unreal Engine is super powerful and can do anything. But in Twinmotion, it's just nice and simple. And sometimes this is the, you know, what you need. You want speed and the ability to quickly work around your model in real time and actually kind of carry on. Okay, so we're ready to start what I call the propping out process now. And this is really enjoyable. This is something that I love to do, dragging in the context and things like the trees. You notice that I've searched for some UK trees, just so I can get the right kind of trees for this sort of project, which is actually obviously set in England. So we've got nice oak there, English oak, and let's just kind of move around. And what we're going to do now is go to vegetation paint, and we're going to drag down a selection of these oak trees into our dock at the bottom. Let's just drag those down. When we're ready, let's just drag down a few others in the mix as well. Look, with the Twinmotion trees, there's a really good selection here. There's never quite enough for your locality, but I think they've tried to kind of cope for trees for all regions of the planet. And the good thing is you can always sort of tint these and tweak them and modify them a bit as well. But look how effective the vegetation paint tool is. Absolutely amazing. You know, you just sort of paint a bit like Photoshop really, isn't it? Sort of painting in 3D. And here we go, you're getting kind of instant forest. This is the kind of thing that I would use for backdrop. Okay, so I wouldn't be trying to do this accurately. This is just me setting a nice sort of context and backdrop for our project. And let's just get down to a bit more of an eye level view now and start setting up a first of our few images. Now the reason it's quite important to set your images up relatively early is because then you begin to sense what you need to work on in the visual. And there's no point in spending ages working on bits of the site or the context if you're just simply not going to see it. So I think we'll just move that tree just to kind of frame the view up a little bit there. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a new vegetation paint. This time I just want to go back to my grass and flowers. So we're going to drag down a few different types of grass into the dock at the bottom and basically select those, get our brush. We might need to reduce our brush size a little bit here. Let's make that a bit smaller, let's say 5 meters. And off we go. We can basically just start painting the landscape. So the Twinmotion vegetation brush really is one of my favourite tools. It's just so quick and easy to use and gets great results super fast. It's very satisfying. You know, you're just adding so much detail in terms of all these kind of mixtures of grass to the project. And don't worry if you make a mistake, because you can kind of rub out, as you'll see in a minute. We'll just tidy up those edges in a second. But it's just super quick, and suddenly, you know, the visual's gone from looking well, where it was in Vectorworks to sort of very CAD model to something a lot softer. So if you do get the eraser side of this brush, just make a nice small brush size. As you can see, just kind of tidying up those edges by rubbing out a little bit. Probably what I'll do is drag in some individual kind of clumps of grass on those edges just to kind of tighten up a bit later. Or, you know, just go for a smaller brush, as I'm doing now, and just sort of carefully paint those edges in. And you know, you get a nice bit of sort of density with a smaller brush. As you can see, you've got to have a steady hand and just sort of carefully just paint those lovely edges in. And yeah, that looks great actually, really happy with that. So just finish off that a little bit there. Okay, fantastic. So what do you think of the brush tool? I just think it's absolutely fantastic. It's so easy to use. And again, it really does remind me of Photoshop. You know, this is the kind of thing that I used to do in 2D in Photoshop years ago, but now I'm able to do it directly in 3D and in real time. So what I often do, as well as creating a vegetation paint for the grass, I'll often create one for little, what I call groups of sort of flowers, and maybe things like the clovers as well. You can see it really is quite rapid, and you kind of mix those two on top of each other. So having 2 vegetation paints is a really good tip here. And then what you can do is you can actually change the density of those individual objects within the painted object. So that's really cool. And we just rub out a few bits if we need to tidy it up a bit on those edges. So, you know, there we go. There's the grass and the flowers looking really, really good. And, you know, the project has been transformed quite rapidly so far. So you notice I've just saved the file. So far I've been working on my Mac, my MacBook Pro. Now what we're going to do is hop over to my PC so that we can use the path tracing feature to create the final images. And you'll see how that can improve the images quite dramatically. Okay, so here we are on my PC. You can see we're just about to launch the 2022.2 Preview 1. And this is the new version that's just come out a few days ago, with some really nice new features. Now, while the project was already started in the other version, really what I want to show you is some of the benefit of these new features. So let me just go and open up that particular project from the Mac, and we'll just immediately carry on working where we left off. So the really nice thing is you'll notice that if you do open on the new preview, it's just going to convert the file and it will leave the old file as it is. Now, there's some really significant benefits in the new version, although it's a beta, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for your final projects. Just make sure you test it out first. There's some great new features, and one of them behind the scenes is the texture compression. So what I'm keen to show you is that here is the project now with a bit more work, okay, and you'll see that we've already got only 60% use of our CPU. Now this is a brand new statistic, it gives us a clue on our graphics card, but we're running at 40 frames a second, which, you know, for this kind of level of quality and size of model is pretty good, I'd say, and everything is running really, really smooth. So you'll notice that that's definitely a big benefit of the new Twinmotion, and that is also combined with this lovely new improvement in things like the speeds as well, so you can kind of navigate through super quickly. Okay, so as I said, here is the model from the Mac with a little bit of propping out. You can see I've added a few people, a few birds and a few other bits and bobs. What I'm keen to do in the next few minutes is really just show you how to set your views up and get the best out of the path tracer. So what we're going to do is go down to images. You can actually see I've got a bunch of images here. So a really good tip here is to set one image up of the view in normal mode. So this means you can kind of navigate through and just sort of carry on working in quite rapid time. And then I also duplicate the view and do a path trace rendering. Okay, and the reason I do this is I want the same view to be able to compare the two things. You can immediately see the difference. Also, what you do find is with the path tracing, for example, you might want the sky dome on and slightly different sort of intensities of sun and ambient lighting. Okay, so don't forget you can adjust not only the intensity of the sky to adjust the image. That's a bit bright for my liking. So let's go back into about 5. Yeah, that's looking good. If you do match the sun degree, then that means all of the sun angles are to do with the rotation of the sky dome itself. So that's how you adjust that sky dome. You can see it's adjusting really nicely there. Now, mentioned this on the other video, but if you haven't already done so, I would recommend you set your path tracer low settings in your preferences to very, very low. So you can see at the moment, I've only got 4 samples and 3 bounces. Probably 2 or 3 bounces is the minimum. Let's make this one, let's change that to 32. Not sure why it was 43 before, and 6 bounces. And then the high setting, actually, you know, we could even go perhaps higher to 500 samples for that one. So basically, most of the time when I'm working, I'll be working in the low settings, and that means that I can adjust sort of things in real time, move around the project even as I'm going, can you see? But as soon as I release and let go, it will finish the path tracing and give me a good result. And then what I tend to do is go to medium settings. Can't really see a lot of difference on the screen. Took a few seconds longer, and if I really want to see the high settings, you'll see the progress bar does take a lot longer, but of course the final image will look better. Okay, so let's go back to low. So these are really nice improvements and nice sort of ways to kind of set your views up. Now let's just review a couple of those images there. So we've got this view here, and here is the equivalent one with the path tracing. You can see I think I'm on medium settings for this one. Now one thing you've got to be a bit careful of, the settings you leave the images on are the settings that it will render out as. So when you are ready for your final quality, just make sure you go and review them and set them to high quality there. So I'll just better put this one onto high quality now, I'm ready. And we'll just review a few more. That's a nice view from a bit higher up. And you can see I can also play around with the different sort of times and the lighting. I actually really like that view with the shadows of the trees, so again, let's render that one out too. Okay, so we've got the path tracer here. Now, a really good little tip here is if you click R for the path tracer, it will turn it on or off. So when you're working, you can work without it on. And when you want it on, you just click R to bring it on. Also, if you do Control 1, it will render with the low path tracing, as you can see. If I do Control 2, it renders with the medium path tracing. Control 2. Or if I do Control 3, you'll see now it progresses a bit more slowly because I'm on the high settings. So I really like the fact you can just turn it all on and off and control it all with those keyboard shortcuts. And this is definitely something that has really sort of speeded up my workflow recently. So I'm just going to pop into full screen mode for a second. This is one of the other big benefits of being able to kind of show your clients the project in full screen. And don't forget, you know, if you're a Twinmotion user, then I would really recommend that you do more on-screen sort of presentations with your clients. I've done a few of these, and the client really has enjoyed the, you know, ability for me to kind of scroll through things like the time of day and interaction as well. Do remember though, if you scroll through the time of day, the shadows won't change if the mode that you're in, because I'm in an image mode, is actually set to a sky dome, which actually has the match sun on. So now look, I can change through those lovely times of the day. I could even do some sort of night shots and sort of scroll through for the client just to show them how that's going to look during the course of the day for their project. So I think that's it now. We're just going to render out these final sort of still images and putting some videos together in the same way that we've done before. Let's just quickly review how to do that. So we're going to go to video, we're going to click create video to create our first frame, and then we're simply going to kind of walk through and just adjust that view of the camera. Let's go a bit faster actually. Just go through a little bit closer around there and just create another frame. If you do want to, you can kind of keep going. Let's just do one more then, zoom into this house here, create plus, rewind, and there we go. That's as easy as that. We just kind of preview our video clip, go round and then kind of head towards the front door there. and we could potentially obviously go inside the building as well. Okay, so what we'll do, we're going to go ahead to export all of these images and all of these videos, and we'll review these at the end of the video. But I hope you enjoyed watching this so far, and let's go, let's export. Okay, so the images have now rendered out, and let's just review those final rendered images and animations. As you see, I've got a nice little split workflow between my Mac, where I love working on my MacBook Pro, doing all the work for the modelling and a lot of the work for Twinmotion for the early stages. Then when I do need the path tracing, I just hop onto the PC where the graphics card has the power to run the path tracing, and it's also really powerful for rendering out these lovely animations as well. So, you know, it's not a bad workflow having a split between Mac and PC if you have both capabilities. But if not, let's hope the path tracing will come to the Mac shortly. Anyway, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Please do subscribe to the channel. As I've said before, it really helps me grow the channel and motivate me to make lots more videos for you. So look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye bye, and thanks for watching.